Right, hello and welcome to a bit of a walk through Adobe After Effects. So first off we're going to launch the program. And if you get a warning like this come up, there's no worries, just click on OK. And when the splash screen comes up like this, we can just go ahead and click on New Composition. But before I do, I just want to say to you that there's a Getting Started link here, which can prove to be very, very useful. So perhaps in your own time, click on that and explore it. For now, I'm going to click on New Composition, and this is where we set up the resolution that we want to work at. So I'm going to work at 1920 by 1080 because that's my final output size that I want. If you're not sure, don't worry too much, just click OK because you can change these settings at a later date. So here is my kind of default blank After Effects window, I guess. Before we get started, just want to draw your attention to a few settings, a few preferences. So go to After Effects and go to Preferences. First one we're going to look at is the import. That's what comes up there. Now, sequence footage is defaulting to 30 frames per second, so I'm going to change that to 25 because that's what I want to work in. Match my composition. We've got length of composition, still footage length of composition, that's okay. So yeah, that's all we have to do on that one. Next we're going to go to media and disk cache. Now, this is quite important that if you're working from a removable hard drive, which you should be, which I am, in here you need to choose a folder on your removable hard drive to store all your temporary files. So I'm just going to go in here, select a folder that I've set up. You can do the same. Click on choose, and that's fine from there. Do the same for this conformed media cache as well. Just going to use the same folder. Like so. We can just delete. There's really nothing in there. So really this is just about setting stuff up so you don't get any problems later on. So all of my temporary files are now going to a folder called Grunt, as I've called it, which means as I go from machine to machine, if I do, I won't have any problems. So that's all okay. Next I want to go to autosave because I might well want autosave on. So that's now ticked on, so I'm going to get an autosave for my projects every 20 minutes. Maximum project versions 5 is probably a bit low. Stick that to about 20. That's that one done. And finally, memory multiprocessing. It's about how much RAM you have After Effects and other Adobe products using on your machine. So you may well, if that's high there, you may want to bring that down a little bit. Minimum it will go down to is 3, but that means that my Adobe products are going to be working really well. Okay, just going to click OK on that. That's everything set up. I've got my composition down here called Comp1. Now I'm going to go ahead and import in my first file. I'm going to go File and Import File. My session files that I'm working from are on my removable hard drive, as they should be, under Shimmer and Stormy. Under Footage, I can look for Stormy happy layers PSD. This is a Photoshop file, and I want to open it up, import it as footage. This will change later on, but for the minute I want my Stormy happy layers PSD, import as footage, click on open. When this box comes up here, I'm quite happy to go for the merged layers of the Photoshop file. It's possible for me to choose layers, so I've got these layers making up my file, but in this instance I'm happy for them all to be merged together as one. Click on OK and then double click. Sure enough, there's my cloud picture, Stormy being happy. It is very big. It's 3508 by 2480, which is bigger than the resolution I'm working at, which is the way you want it, scaling down rather than scaling up. But that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to go ahead now and drag and drop the file onto my composition timeline. And now from up here you can see this is my composition, which is what I'm working on down here. And we've got our first file into After Effects. Okay, so having got my file in, first thing I need to do is make it smaller so it fits on my screen, the whole of it fits on the screen. So from my composition timeline, click on my file, along to the left there's a little triangle. If I click on that triangle, I get transform. If I click on that triangle, I get my main control points in After Effects, which are anchor point, position, scale, rotation and opacity. So in this instance I want to scale down. Now anything in yellow means you can hover over it, you'll get a little finger come up indicating that you can click and scrub the value. So I'm going to click and hold and scrub to the left, dragging the value down and resizing my picture. I'm going to scale it to about 30%. There. That's that job done. That's good news. Now what we're seeing at the minute is the default background color in After Effects, which you can change if you want to, but we're actually working on a transparent background, and I can prove that by clicking on this little checkerboard toggle transparency grid. You click on there, you can see it is indeed transparent in the background. If I click again, we've got black in the background. It doesn't mean the black's going to come out in your final work, it just makes it easier to view what you're doing. Actually what we're going to do now is we're going to create a gradient blue background for our cloud to sit in, Stormy, so he feels at home. So over on the right hand side here we've got an effects and presets panel. If I click in there, I can look for gradient. As soon as I start typing in, I'll start to get results. And what I'm after here in this instance is gradient ramp. I can click and drag the little icon of gradient ramp over onto... Oh, actually I can't, can I? Because I've got nowhere to put it, because I don't want to make Stormy a gradient. I'm happy the way he looks. I need to make the background a gradient. And in order to do that, I need to add what's called a solid. So I'm going to right mouse click down in my composition and do new solid. Now if it did matter to me what colour the solid was in the background, I can choose from this here and have a solid colour covering the background. So let me just do red for a minute. If I click on OK and then OK again, you'll see that what's happened is that in my timeline, in my composition window, the red solid has gone on the topmost layer, which means it's the only thing I can see. If I drag it down in the layer order underneath Stormy, we'll get Stormy on a red background. Now the important thing here for what we want to do is that we now have something that we can put our gradient ramp onto. So I can click and drag, not onto Stormy there, onto the background here, and we'll see it goes black and white, which is the default for the gradient ramp over here. So this panel here is now showing the project files and also the effect controls. So if I click back onto the effect controls, we can see that indeed we've got a gradient ramp showing up there. It's just a simple matter now of going on to the start color, clicking on it. Let's have a blue, say that kind of color. And straight away you can see the difference there. End color is white. I'm pretty happy with that actually. You can change this. Definitely don't want that. There's a whole load of things that you can change. So basically we've learned an important thing already. Your effects and presets are over here. When you've put them onto your footage, you get an effect control panel here, which allows you to change the look of what's going on. Excellent. So now would be a really good time to save before the computer crashes on us. Not that they ever do. Haha. Go File, Save As, and I can just call this Shimmer and Stormy. We'll just call it Shimmer and Stormy actually. I don't need to put a version number on because I'll show you why in a minute. Choose where to save it. That's fine. Click on Save. That's all good. And now we've got it saved. Our autosave will kick in as well. Right. So really we want to get something moving around here, some animation, because it's pretty boring just having a still image like this. So this is where we get to the fundamental, possibly one of the most important, if not the important, concepts in After Effects, which is keyframes. So a keyframe is a key point in time where something changes. So that my first step is to decide at what point in time down here on my timeline I want something to change, and I want something to change right at the very beginning. So I'm going to go way back here to the very beginning, drag back there, and what I want to change is position. So what I'm going to do is click on Stormy. Oops. You see how I've moved the background there by mistake because it's selected here. So I can just do Command Z to undo. And while I'm here, actually, red solid is very misleading because this is now a blue and white gradient. So I'm just going to click on red solid, right mouse click, and I'm going to rename that simply to BG for background. Brilliant. So with that done, I'm going to make sure I select the correct layer, Stormy. Then I can just click and drag him off of my viewable area. I can still see where he is because I've got this box outline around here. Okay, so you go to the point in time that you want to start doing the change from. Then you select the value. So in this instance, it's going to be position. And this little stopwatch here, if I click on that, that enables keyframing and puts my first keyframe in for me. The next important step is to go forward a certain amount of time. So say if I go to around 5 seconds here. Now having gone forward in time, if I click and drag my desired element, i.e. Stormy, and I put him into the middle of the frame, you can see that I've got a motion path drawing along here, which means that if I drag my timeline back, indeed I've got movement happening. Simple as that. I can then go forward more in time, and I can drag him somewhere else. And again in time, and drag him somewhere else. Now if I go back, you'll see that he's following a certain path. You could do exactly the same thing with scale, rotation, opacity, all of those. Anchor point. The anchor point's a little bit different. So let's stick to position, scale, rotation and opacity. So what I could do is I could go back and I could think, okay, while Stormy's coming on, I want him to be very small and then zoom up as though he's almost getting closer. So right back to the beginning, click on the scale stopwatch. It's not going to take any of these points away. Come forward and I'm going to say, well, when he gets to the middle, let's have him full size. But you notice he's not changed size at the minute because although I clicked on the stopwatch, I didn't change the scale. So I need to go back onto that keyframe, which I can do by dragging back to the beginning because I know it's at the beginning. If it wasn't right at the beginning, what I can do is over here I've got jump to next keyframe. So if I click on this, it's exactly onto that keyframe. I can bring my scale down to really small, 4%. That should do nicely. Now if I drag forward, you can see he stays at 4% because what I need to do is choose where I want him to get bigger. Let's say round about here. Then adjust the value. Adjusting the value puts in the other keyframe. And now we've got a scaling up and moving Stormy. Good. So far so good. Now, After Effects is a little bit peculiar when you want to view what you've done. You can push the spacebar. Push the spacebar, as you might expect, you'll get an approximation of what's going on. But up here you'll see that I'm not actually playing back at real time. And what you really want to be able to do is view the little bit that you've done in real time each time. The way we do that is up here we've got a little gold bar, work area start, and right over here at the end of my composition of my timeline another gold bar which is work area end. The way you work by viewing what you've done in After Effects is just to preview the last little segment that you did, because After Effects is quite hungry on memory, so you're never going to be able to play the whole of your timeline in real time when viewing it at full resolution. So if I put my work area there, that's all I really want to see in real time. I just simply select start and end, and then over here in my preview panel, the button I want to be pressing is the RAM preview button. If I click that, there'll be the green bar will go across and I won't be viewing in real time, but as soon as the green bar goes to the end, I'll then get real-time viewing of what's going on, and it will loop play so that I can watch it again and again if I need to. You will also get audio if there is any audio. There isn't at the minute, but it's important to realise that if you press the spacebar, you'll never ever hear the audio that's on your timeline, whereas if you RAM preview, you will hear the audio. Brilliant. Okay, so back to this issue of versioning when you save. Now that I've done a little bit more, I'm going to go to File, and instead of Save or Save As, I'm going down to Increment Save. And if I click on Increment Save, what I get is my project saved and then a new version opening. So you can see up here I've got Shimmer and Stormy 2. That's the way that I'd recommend that you work from now on. Okay, so we've got our keyframing going on. We've got a bit of movement and a bit of scaling going on. Let's do another stylistic thing over in our effects and presets. Just going to type in shadow, and we've got down here. There's drop shadow and radial shadow. Let's just go for a radial shadow. Can't even say it. Going to click and drag, make sure it goes onto Stormy. Okay, and as you can see, we've definitely got a shadow on there. In our effect controls, it's showing up here. So what I'm going to do is play around with these settings. The yellow settings, remember, you can drag and scrub. It should be possible by playing around with these just to get the desired effect. So what I'm going to do is put a slight shadow on there just to give a bit of depth, a bit of 3D. If you can't find your project files again, if this is taking up all the room, on any of these panes you can put your mouse onto them, click and drag and resize, and now we can see that over here I can click back on my project files. Right, back to these keyframes then. If I play this like so, RAM preview, remember the green line goes across. Not real time at the minute, although we are seeing what's going on. And any minute now we get real time. I can press the space bar at any time to stop. It's kind of okay, but it's dragging on a bit. I think we need to kind of move it along a bit. So what I'm going to do is have exactly what I've got happening, but make it happen quicker. And this is dead easy really, because if you think about it, our keyframes are here, spaced along a timeline at a certain distance. If we drag the keyframes closer together, it basically means, whoops, that everything happens a lot quicker. Now, as you just saw, I was dragging keyframes one by one. But in fact, what I can do is I can click and drag and lasso a bunch of keyframes and then drag them all closer like this. So that's my positioning happening a lot quicker. Whoops. Not sure why that's happening. And now I can just drag my scaling. And if I can just scrub to give me a bit of an idea of what's going on. Yeah, that's looking pretty good, I think. I'm going to drag in that work area because I don't need to see the extra stuff at the end. I'm going to click on my RAM preview. Right, let's have a little bit of a look at motion blur. In order to do that, I'm really going to need to speed up my keyframes yet again. Difficulty is, I've got quite a small space to see what I'm doing down here. So if you need to zoom in on your timeline, we've got a big mountain, little mountain here. Click on this slider, zoom in. I've got a lot more space now to see what we're doing. And I'm basically going to I'm going to grab these two keyframes, move them along a little bit. Oops. Get these two keyframes. Whoops. Missed it again. There you go. And then I'm going to drag these two keyframes a lot closer to speed things up. So what I've got especially is quite a fast movement right at the end here. Let's just go ahead and preview this a minute. Okay, so that's real time. So quite fast at the beginning and at the end. In order to put motion blur on, you enable it as a global setting here, and then you switch it on the layers that you want it switched on to by going over here to this little icon here with the circles blurred, like so. And what you should see is that even if you've park your edit line on a part of your timeline, you'll see the motion blur kicking in there. So if I now, let's just adjust this work area so we're only viewing what we want to view, and click on round preview there, we'll see the motion blur kicking in. And motion blur does take up quite a lot of resources, so it might take a while to build the preview. And at any minute we shall see. Here we are, real time. So it can improve your animation quite a bit, make it look a little bit more realistic, if you can use that word in this instance. Just a little hint that if you can't see your panel here, down here on the bottom left hand corner is an expand and collapse these panels down here. So you might have to click on these to reveal your motion blur switch there. So good, making good progress. I think it's now a good time to go File and Increment Save. Working on version 3 now. Good, and what we're going to do now is move on to create another composition that's going to be our background. Right, so to create another composition, it's simple. Just go to Composition, New Composition. You should remember our choices from last time. And I'm just going to put in here BG for background. Click on OK. And as you can see, we've now got a blank composition because we just created it. Our other composition is there. And even if I was to shut it down, I can get back to it by clicking on Comp 1 there. Double click, up it comes. In the interest of doing things, naming things properly, right mouse click on Comp 1 and type Stormy, intro. Cool. Right, now we're going to bring in some more material. File, import file. You've got to be a bit careful here, don't rush ahead on this one, because the desert background layers, which is what we want to bring in, actually want to bring in as its own composition, not as footage. So click on here, and we're going for composition, retain layer styles, sorry, not styles, retain layer sizes, which means it will be its original size, so that we don't lose any quality. We can just scale down, but we've got some room for maneuver if we wanted to zoom in. Click on open. Don't seem to have worked, so I'm going to try that again. Click on open, and we get this other dialog box. We've got composition, retain layer sizes. It's asking if we want to merge the layer styles or have editable layer styles. So go for the editable one, because that gives us more choice. Once we click on OK, you can see that it's brought in our new stuff as its own composition. And if we double click on it, we'll see the layers, the Photoshop layers within that one composition. But we can, although there's many layers, we can actually use the whole composition as though it's another element in our timeline. So make sure you click on the background, which is our empty layer, and then just drag down desert background layers into your background, like so. Okay, so I've gone to continue recording this video tutorial, and I've just updated my After Effects and found out it's slightly changed. We've now got blue where we had yellow, but I don't think that's going to make any massive difference as far as doing this tutorial is concerned, so I'll crack on. We've got a desert background down on our background composition. As you can see, it's far too big to fit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press S for scale on the keyboard, and that will just reveal the scale property. I can now click and drag and resize that down so it fits just like so. want to actually see the background part, the transparency in my background. So I'm now going to click on this checkerboard little toggle transparency grid button there, and I can now see that my background is smaller than my actual background composition, but that's okay, I'll actually want that. So what I want to do is I want to fit my background, just clicking and dragging it and putting it over on the left hand side like so. I'm now going to select my desert background layer in my comp, and I'm going to do Command D, which would duplicate the layer. I'm then going to select, let's say, the bottom layer and drag that so that it actually slots on just there. Now, it's kind of okay, we've now got a full background image, but there's a bit of a problem with this join here. So what I'm going to do is go over to Effects and Presets, and in this little search box here, I'm going to look for flop, and then if I drag flop onto this clip here, it will actually mirror image it. So although it looks a little bit strange around the two cactuses here, it's actually better than it was. Right, now what I want to do is to create the illusion of movement. I'm going to move the background element while the foreground unicorn, as we will see in a minute, stay still. And this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to click on the left hand layer. In fact, I'm going to rename these layers by clicking, right mouse clicking on them and going to rename. So I'm going to just call this background LH for left hand, and call this one, you guessed it, background RH. So it's a good idea to name your layers because it can save a lot of confusion. So background left hand, I'm going to press P on the keyboard for position. This is my start position that I want, so I'm going to click on, I'm at the beginning. This is quite important, remember to be where you want to be before you start animating. So I'm at the beginning of my timeline. I'm going to click on the stopwatch to enable keyframes on the position parameter. Sure enough, there's my keyframe there. I'm then going to go forward, say 10 seconds or so, and I'm going to drag, oops, wrong value, always do that, the first value there, my horizontal, I'm going to drag until I'm off the screen, like so. Now, slight problem there is that I've got one side moving, but I haven't got the other side moving. It's quite a neat little trick I can do to make the other side move without having to keyframe. And that is if I go back to the beginning so the two are matched up, just here where there's a parent heading, I can parent up a layer so that it moves automatically. So I want the right hand needs to have the parent of the left hand. So I'm going to drag this pick whip, put it over onto the left hand, and now the left hand is the parent and the right hand is the child. Wherever the parent goes, the child will follow. Okay. So what we'll do in fact now is we'll modify the end position. So I can go to this point here, I can put in, because it's the left hand that I've keyframed, I can put in a keyframe by clicking on this little button here. It puts a keyframe in at that position there. I can then delete this other keyframe, which I don't want, and now I'll have the movement happening and stopping exactly where I want it to be. Now, keen eyes amongst you might have noticed that I haven't actually lined up this awfully well on the right hand side, so I can just click on the right hand side and I can literally just drag it until it's lining up better, and now we have a smoothly scrolling background. Okay, so I'm going to now bring down another element to hide this rather obvious join in my two backgrounds here. To do that, I'm just going to go File and Import File. I'm going to find my session files and my big cactus PSD file. I can bring this in as footage, there's no need to bring it into composition. Click on OK. Click on OK for editable layer styles, and in it comes. Stick that down onto my other, into my background on the topmost layer, otherwise if we put it underneath it will be hidden. So there we are. It's very big, as you might have expected. I'm going to press S for scale on my keyboard, and then I'm going to drag the scale down and position the cactus so it's something like this. Maybe a bit bigger, like so. So it's just breaking it up a bit, disguising the fact that there's a join there. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. Now again, exactly the same way that we moved the right hand background layer, we can do the same thing with the big cactus. So I just need to make sure I go to the appropriate point in time, which is at the beginning. All I need to do is grab the pick whip and put the parent of the big cactus to be the left hand side, and now we've got a moving cactus. So all good with the background, jolly good. We're now ready for the unicorn. So let's go ahead and get Shimmer the unicorn in. File, import file. Shimmer full is the one we want. Shimmer full layers PSD. Probably good to bring it in as a comp. It's not a lot of difference really, but we'll do composition, retain the layer style sizes for maximum versatility. Click open, click OK, and we can just bring the shimmer full layers composition down. Put shimmer down in between big cactus and background left hand. I'll show you why in a minute. Shimmer's actually facing the wrong way. We're going to use our flop effect, which is still here, onto shimmer, flop her the other way round, and I'm going to scale her down. S for scale, click and drag, like so. Now we've got a bit of a project going here now. We've done quite a bit, and it'd be a real shame to lose stuff, so we're going to save, but I'm not going to go file save. Just have, I know, but I've gone file save. But now what I want to do for this and all subsequent saving is go file and go increment and save, and doing the increment and save gives me a complete new version of the project. It's a bit like a backup or a history, if you like. So we've got our Shimmer the unicorn, and hopefully now you can see why we've put shimmer in between the big cactus and the background, because this way we get shimmer to be able to go behind the cactus, giving us the illusion of a bit of depth here. So what I'm going to do is put shimmer just in frame, like so. It's fairly good. Don't really need to see the hooves. In fact, it's probably better if we don't. And now, if I drag along, it looks like shimmer is walking through. In fact, what I might do is drag her along a bit more, like so. And then she comes out the other side a bit from the cactus when my movement stops. Okay, all good so far. Now, I don't think I've covered yet on how to view stuff real time. So I can press the spacebar and I will get an approximation of what's going on, but I won't get it in real time. Up here it's telling me I'm only viewing stuff at a slower frames per second than I'm working at, and also I only really want to view to this keyframe because then nothing else happens movement wise. But my preview, my play line will go all the way along, right the way up to 30 seconds, and there's no need for that. So I'm going to press the spacebar again to stop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this here, my preview bar, and I'm going to drag my preview bar from the end, covering everything, to just beyond my last keyframe, like so. Now I'm going to click on this RAM preview button right the way up here. If I click on there, basically After Effects will render, and you might notice on yours that a green line starts to form. Once the green line's formed, it will then play real time, and it will loop play over the bit that we're interested in playing in. So that's how to do proper previewing. The other thing worth mentioning is that if you have sound, which we don't have at the minute, you will only hear sound if you do this RAM preview. You won't actually hear sound if you press the spacebar. So, all good so far. What we're going to do is add a little bit of movement into shimmer, a bit of a kind of a walking movement. It's going to be very rudimentary. There's ways of getting more lifelike movement, but let's just try this so we can practice our keyframing. So it's shimmer that I want. I want to do a rotational keyframe. R for rotation, up it comes. I'm going to click on my little enable keyframe stopwatch at the beginning. I'm going to go forward slightly, and then I have two values here. The first value is the number of rotations, so if I put in a 1 there, shimmer would rotate through 360 degrees. As it is, I just want to rotate very slightly, so I'm going to click and drag the second value to a number of degrees, which is, let's say, 5. It's probably a bit excessive, but it'll do for now. So I've gone forward very slightly. In fact, if I zoom in, we'll be able to see that a bit better. I moved my position indicator to there, and I dragged my rotational value to 5 degrees, so shimmer's dipped down 5 degrees. I can then go to here. I can select my first keyframe. I can do Command C or edit copy. Command V, edit paste. My keyframe value from here is pasted to here, which was 0. So I'm now going 0, 5, 0. And then I could do here, I could type in, because you can type in as well as drag, -5, which means shimmer will press enter, shimmer will go back 5 degrees the other way. Then what I can do is I can select all of these keyframes and do Command C, edit copy, go forward to around about here, do Command V. and I've got another walk cycle happening, like so. So I'll do one more paste, just say round about here, Command V. No, we've got time for another one as well, I think. So just there, Command V. Oh, actually got loads of time, haven't we? We've probably got time to do at least 3 more. So I'm just going to do Command V, Command V, Command V. It's probably just about right. Although we will get shimmer. What we'll do is just cut off these, just last keyframe. Click on it, press delete, and then we've pretty much got what we want. There we go. Fantastic. So again, if I wanted to preview this at real time, I would make sure my work area is adjusted accordingly. I'd click on this round preview. I get a green bar going across. Once the green bar has gone across, I'll then get hopefully nice smooth playback at the proper frames per second, judging what I'm going to do. Brilliant. So far so good. Don't forget, every time you've done something that's relevant that you want to save, increment and save. File, increment, save. We'll save what you've got and then open a new version of your project. Right, what's next, I hear you say, with great expectancy? Well, we've got shimmer. We've got shimmer going through desert. That's all well and good. So pretty much the final thing I want to cover in this tutorial, but a really crucial skill, is masking. Right, so what's happening is Stormy has gone off on an adventure, but without telling Shimmer. Shimmer's worried, gone looking for Stormy. Stormy realises that he's going to have to come out, but he's not happy about it. In order for that to happen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mask from which Stormy can fly out from. So I'm going to go to this point here where Shimmer's finished walking through. And I'm going to cut a mask in this cloud here, enabling Stormy to come out. So I select the relevant layer, which is the left hand, background left hand here. I then choose the pen tool, and the pen tool is what's going to be able to create a mask. Now, all I'm going to do is in the middle of this cloud, I'm going to click and do a bit of a randomish pattern. I'm not clicking and dragging. If I click and drag, I get curves, and that's a whole new skill level to obtain. So I recommend that you practice with the pen tool so you can do lovely perfect curves, but you can just click a point at a time and it will draw a line for you. When you get back to the original start point, you get a little circle next to your pen nib. When you click, you complete the path, and you can see I've definitely got a mask happening there because the background's disappeared. If I now go to my relevant layer, background left hand, I can see that my mask is here, like so. If I click on this little triangle, it will reveal the mask and it will tell me it's working in add mode. I'm going to click on subtract instead, and that's actually what I want. I want a hole in this cloud. I don't, however, want to see a hole. I want it to look as though it's normal, and in order to do that, I can duplicate this background left hand layer, Command D. But what I do need to do now is the bottom one of these layers, because what I've done is I've got the mask on both, and I definitely don't want a mask on both. I want to take the mask off of the bottom background left hand layer. So I'm just going to press M for mask, select it, oops, and delete that mask. Okay, and now you can see up here that it looks as though I've got rid of the mask. If however I turn the visibility momentarily off of this layer, you can see that the mask is still there. So basically I've enabled myself a hole here that Stormy will be able to fly out of. So let's try it out and see if it works. Go to Project and go File, Import File, and let's bring in Stormy upset. He's upset because he's been told to come back, spoilt his adventure. Just going to click on Open, bringing that in as footage is fine. Same old story, click on OK there. Bring Stormy down. It's quite important here again that we do the correct layer placement, so it's in between the two background left hand layers, like so. Now at the minute it's way too big. Go back to my default pointer. Click on Stormy, upset, S for scale. Drag the scale down. It's going to have to be really quite small. Small enough to fit inside my mask. So you can actually see what's happening is when I move him, it's working, the actual mask is working the opposite way around to what I want it to. So I'm just going to place him there for a minute, and I'm going to click on my first left hand layer, and I can see the mask outline here. I'm going to press M for mask, and I'm going to change it from subtract to add. And you can see that Stormy has disappeared behind the mask. What I can do now, click on Stormy, upset, make sure that he's completely hidden by dragging him back in. And then I can simply, at this point in time here, do a positional keyframe. In fact, position, and I want to do position and scale. So I'm going to twiddle on this triangle up, twiddle it down so I can click on position and scale keyframes. I'm going to go forward in time, and what I'm going to do is drag out Stormy all the way over here, and also make him bigger so he looks like he's coming to the fore, being a bit upset. And now because I've got position and scale keyframes, it will look as though he's coming out from within the cloud. Going to do a RAM. Just going to adjust my work area to here. Click on a RAM preview so we can see what it looks like. Oh, okay, got a bit of a problem there. Which is fine. You can see that he's only being hidden there, and then he comes out. And this is what it's all part of, is working out how to get rid of these little errors. So the second bit's fine, where he zooms out. Now, a way we can get rid of him so he only shows up on the second bit is very simple. I can basically go to the point at which I want him to appear there, and I can go to the Stormy layer and I can just trim the layer back so that the layer doesn't exist before that point. And now hopefully when I do a RAM preview, got the preview going across the green bar, building. We're seeing what's happening but not at real time. RAM preview, going across, and now hopefully we see real time. No Stormy. Shimmer's looking for Stormy, stops, out comes Stormy, being found out. Okay, straight away file, increment and save. And because we'll keep doing RAM previews here, it's a good idea every now and again to go to edit and purge and do all memory and disk cache. As you can see, I've actually got 1.5 gigabytes built up in my disk cache, which is a huge amount. Click on OK. It will free up more space for me to be able to do more RAM previews. So that's as far as I'm going with this at the minute. I hope it's useful. I will just show you how I would now export this out to go on to, say, YouTube. So don't worry if this disappears for a minute, it's back. I would go to my main background, my main layer that I need to export out, the one with everything in it is the one called BG. I'd click on there and I would go File, Export, and do Add to Adobe Media Encode queue. I would do that rather than the render queue, which was the old way of doing things, because I can send this to Media Encoder, and whilst Media Encoder is handling the rendering of this out, I can carry on working on this for a different project. So what we'd have now is Adobe Media Encoder will start up somewhere. Just got to find out where it is. There it is, starting up in my background here. I've just minimized down After Effects. And when Media Encoder starts up, which hopefully won't take too much longer, it is a new update, so that's probably why it's taking a while. We can render out. The good thing as well is that apart from After Effects using this, Premiere will work in the same way. You can render sequences out from Premiere, and you can even use Media Encoder as a standalone piece of software to convert any file type, pretty much, video or audio, to another version. So here it is. Here's Adobe Media Encoder. What I'm expecting now in a second, hopefully, is that my composition will appear here in the queue. Might just need a gentle nudge doing it again. So going back onto After Effects, making sure I've got the background layer selected, composition selected. Go File, go to Export, Add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. Minimize it down. It had put it there, so I've got it here twice. It's quite useful because if you can render out more than one version, so I could do this one as QuickTime, a higher quality version, and then I could do this one as maybe H.264. So if I was to click on here, this option here, preset, I can go into here where it says QuickTime preset is that here. If I click on here now and choose H.264 and click on here, I can scroll down, find YouTube. Actually worked at 1920 by 1080, so I can go 1080p HD. There, give that a name. Shimmer Final. Put that on the desktop. Save. Go OK. And I could maybe leave this as a QuickTime. Just maybe change the size up. I could match. No, won't do that. In fact, I haven't really got many options. So click on it again. Bring up this other window. QuickTime preset HD 720p. Click on there and do. No, I'm still not happy with that. Take control, I think, and go from here instead where it says video codec. I can choose Apple ProRes 422, which is very high quality. It's going to be a big file size, but kind of like a master copy. QuickTime, Apple ProRes. You can set up all of this stuff, or you can use presets. I'm going to change that to 1920 by 1080. That's all looking good. I'm going to call this Shimmer Master. Save. Go OK. And I've now got two separate versions of my work here queued up to come out at different qualities. Just click the green play bar, and sure enough my work's coming out. So at this point now I could go back to After Effects and carry on working on my project or a different project completely. And that's it really. As we'll see in a minute when my first one comes out, the lower quality H.264 that I can upload to YouTube. I can actually upload it to YouTube, or in fact put it on a stick, send it via WeTransfer. Going to minimize down this for a minute and just double click on my H.264 version. Hopefully that will open. There we are, and that's now opened up in QuickTime. Oh, actually no, VLC of course. Good old VLC. So there we are. I hope that was useful, and hope you have lots of fun exploring After Effects. I'll be back soon with another tutorial. Thank you and goodbye.